Hello, in this video I will show you how Claude agent skills actually work. This video is part of my complete Udemy Claude Code Masterclass series. If you want to learn Claude Code from the basics to advanced concepts, I have linked my highest rated Claude Code course in the description. Please check it. I have divided this section into 3 parts. First, we will look into what is Claude agent skills. What is it? What are its benefits and how to create one. In the second part, we will discuss about what is the difference between skills and other features of Claude like subagent, MCP, /commands. In the third part, we will do a hands-on demo in creating a skill and use it in our workflow. Let's jump into the section. First, what is a skill? A skill is a markdown file that teaches Claude how to do something specific. A skill teaches Claude to perform a particular task. It can be anything like reviewing a PR using your organization's standards, or generating a commit message with a particular format, or simply querying your database. This might sound like similar to a /command or a MCP tool. In the next section, we will clearly look what is the difference between each of these features and when to use each of these. So simply, a skill teaches Claude to perform a particular workflow. So when you are asking Claude to perform a task that matches a skill, then Claude will automatically apply that skill and perform that task. Let's go to Visual Studio Code and see how to create a skill. You can create any number of skills in your project. So the structure is simple. Under your .claude folder, you create a folder called skills. Within these skills, you can create any number of skill. Just create another folder. For example, you name it as my skill, and within that you have to create a skill.md file. This is mandatory. Here in the skill.md file, we define what this skill is going to do and how to do that. All other files are optional. Based on the need, these files can be created. So these are called additional resources. To perform this skill, these resources can be used by the skill. So in similar way, you can create multiple folders, that is multiple skills. Each of these folder is going to have a skill.md file. So this is the only mandatory file that is needed for a skill. I will create a skill to simply read files in the directory. Let me open the Project Explorer. Under .claude folder, you have to create a folder called skills. Similar to agents, commands, create another folder. So now under the skills, you can create any number of skills that you want. For example, under the agents, we have multiple agents. Similarly, under the skills, we can have multiple skills as well. Let me create a folder. I will name it as read files safely. As I mentioned, skill.md file is a mandatory file that is required for each skill. Let me create a skill.md file. Now what is the structure of this skill.md file? Each skill.md file should have two components. One is metadata, next one is instructions. So these two data will be separated by a 3 dashes. What is metadata? Let me go back to the Claude documentation. Search for metadata. So here you can see an example skill.md file. The first part is called metadata. Available metadata fields are name, description, allowed tools, what model to use, and few other. In this, name and description is mandatory. All other metadata are optional. Also, you have to note down, these metadata have a maximum limit. For example, the maximum limit for name is 64 characters. Similarly, description has a maximum of 1024 characters. Why they have set this limit? This is where an important concept of skills is coming in. They call it as progressive disclosure. That is, skills ensure only relevant content occupies the context window at a particular time. So they don't want to overload the context. So with skills, we can effectively manage the context window. We load only what is needed. How we are performing this, I will explain. So first let's create a skill. Let me copy this. Let's go to the Visual Studio Code and let me paste it here. So we should have a name and a description. Name will be same as our directory because this is going to be name of our skill. Read files safely. And I should give a proper description. This is very important. Here you have to define what this skill does and when to use it. Because based on this information only, Claude will decide when to use this skill. So within the available limit, try to give a clear information of what this skill can do and when the Claude can use this. So after this, we have to provide the instructions. Let me provide some instruction for now. Later on in the demo section, we will clearly look how to create the instruction. For now, I will just provide additional resources. For complete API details, see the reference.md. And for usage example, see examples.md. That means these files are available inside our skills. So that whenever this skill is used, based on the need, Claude can use these files. When it wants to understand a complete API detail, it will use this reference.md file. When it wants to understand an example, then it will use the examples.md file. So under this skill, you have to create all these additional resources. For example, reference.md, examples.md, everything you can create. If you want, you can create a folder, and within that folder also you can add these MD files. There is no limit to how many additional resources you have to add. You can add as much details as you need. You can add all your API documentation. For example, if you are doing a front-end development and you are creating a skill for doing front-end development, you can add all the architectural design or your organization, tools, resources, everything under this skills folder. Because skills load on demand. Whenever is needed, at that time only these resources will be loaded. As I mentioned, an important feature of skills is managing effectively the context window. So based on the instruction, when that particular need arises, at the time only the additional resources will be loaded. I will explain this with a table. Okay, there is a concept of skill loading levels. The skill loads in 3 levels. In the first level, whenever you start your Claude, it will read all the skills and load the metadata into the context. That's why we are maintaining a limit for the metadata. It should be under 100 tokens. If you remember, here we have seen maximum 64 characters for the name and 1024 characters for the description. Because they are limiting the metadata to be less than 100 tokens. So this metadata will be always shared with the Claude. 100 tokens is very minimal compared to Claude's maximum context window of 2 lakh tokens. So the metadata, name and description will be always shared with the Claude. And when a need arises, for example, Claude decides, okay, I can use this skill for this particular task. Then it will request for the instructions. So this will be shared in the context only when Claude requests. That's why the description has to be very clear. Because based on the description only, Claude will decide which skill to use and when to use it. Till it decides, none of this information, instructions or the resources is not going to be shared with the Claude. So based on the description only, it decides, okay, I am going to use this skill, share the instructions. So this will be loaded in the context when the skill is triggered. And this also has a maximum limit of 5000 tokens, that is almost equal to 4000 words. Then Claude will start executing these particular instructions. And whenever it is needed, it will make use of these different additional resources. So these additional resources will be used only when it is needed. For example, for performing a particular skill, it needs only the reference.md, then other resources wouldn't be loaded into the context at all. This way, skill allows us to manage the context effectively. Similarly, when it wants to execute some script, which is under our skills, then these scripts will be executed in your local machine and only the results will be shared with the Claude. So you can maintain any number of scripts. It can be Python, Bash or any script in your machine, and you have to put them under scripts folder and you can make use of them. So this way the context window is not overloaded and it is effectively managed. Unless a skill is used, none of the information is shared with the Claude. Only the metadata will be loaded into the context, which is very less. So the context is clear and not polluted with unwanted informations. As I mentioned, you want to maintain some scripts for these skills. Then you can create another folder, scripts, and you can maintain all your script file under this folder. So now it might be clear for you. A skill is a workflow which teaches Claude to perform some task. The task can be anything and it helps to effectively manage the context window. And the important information is the description has to be clear and concise so that the Claude can take the better decision. Now let's look what is the difference between skills and other features in Claude that we have already seen. First, what is skill? Skill is a specialized context-aware intelligence that is applied whenever it is needed. Claude decides when to use a skill, so it's not manually triggered. One of the important features of skills is it is composable. That is, skills can use multiple resource files. We have already seen under the skills we have multiple files like scripts, reference.md or any file we can have or directories which act as a resource for this particular skill. Not only under this directory, you can reference files from any directory in your system. Similarly, you can make use of other slash commands as well that is already available. You can invoke inside your skills. Similarly, skills can reference MCP tools as well. We have already seen skills can invoke different scripts. Similarly, it can use any MCP tools that are available in your Claude. So a better use case for using the skills will be for reviewing the code, because for reviewing a code, you might need multiple files. For example, when you do a front-end review, you might need architectural design, front-end components, whether the components are properly used, and many other files. Similarly, when you do a back-end code review, you might need API documentation and different resource files. We don't have to load all these files into the context. If you create a skill, based on the need, Claude will decide which resource file to use and it can load it into the context. Similarly, we can use for architectural guidance, any workflow that needs multiple resource files, we can use skills. Now check the difference between different features and skills. First, skills versus Claude.md versus hooks. We know skills provide specialized knowledge, whereas Claude.md is a global file which is available in the project and which provides information about the whole project, and it is loaded default into the context always. And we use hooks for triggering some action when a particular event happens. For example, when a file is saved or when a PR is created, we want to send a notification to our Teams channel. Or when Claude expects our input, we need a notification. In such cases, we will be using hooks. So I hope there is no confusion between these three. Let me jump into the next component. Skills versus subagents. Skills are specialized knowledge, whereas subagents are an isolated context. Skills will be loaded in the main conversation itself. When Claude decides to use a skill, it will be loaded in the same context. Whereas subagent is for creating a separate isolated context. For example, when you want to review a PR using some standards, you can create a skill. So any agent that is creating a PR will use this skill. Whereas we use subagents to mainly perform different actions. For example, you can create a subagent to review a code. Parallelly, we can run another subagent which might write the unit test cases or execute the test cases. And each of these subagent is going to have a separate context window. These subagents might use the skills. Let me go to the next one. Skills versus MCP tools. MCP servers provide Claude with access to external tools and data sources. So basically MCP provides the tools, whereas skills define how to use the available tools. A skill can use multiple tools. Consider MCP tool like a Python code. A skill can reference multiple MCP tool based on the need, and it can make use of these tools. Next one is skills versus slash commands. This is a little bit overlapping area. So we will use slash commands when we want to run a specific repeatable action. For example, you might have a prompt which you might use regularly. Instead of copy pasting this prompt every time, we can create a slash command. So basically slash command we can use for repeatable actions, a simple repeatable action. Whereas skills we will create for sharing specialized knowledge with Claude. And skills will be triggered by the Claude. Based on the need, Claude will decide which skill to use and it will trigger. But mostly slash commands will be manually triggered. As I mentioned, for repeatable actions, we can create slash commands and we can manually trigger it. So an example can be for reviewing PR, we can use the skills. We can use slash commands for something like deploying. The deployment steps will be same. So you can create a slash command and execute that command. So whenever it is needed, skills can reference different slash commands also. Hope the differences are clear now. By the way, in my full Udemy course, I go much deeper into each of these concepts: slash command, subagent, MCP tools. What it is, how to create them, and how to use them in a real-time project. If you are interested, please check the full Udemy course. Now we are going to create a skill and use it in our project. For demo purpose, I have designed a UI designer skill. So basically this skill is going to design our UI application. As we have already seen, the structure is under Claude folder. We have to create a skills folder. Under that, we have to create our skill, UI designer. It will have mandatory skill.md file. It's very important. The file name has to be all caps, and we have two resource files. So designsystem.md is going to have CSS details, and run and verify Python is a script which will run our application. Let me create these files and explain more. Let's go to the project explorer. Under .claude folder, let's create another folder, skills. Create a folder, skills. So under the skills, we will create our first skill, UI designer. There will be another folder, UI designer. And for skill.md is a mandatory file. Let me create a file, skill.md. Now we have to fill in the content for the skill.md file. We already know skill.md file has two components, metadata and body. I already have the details for skill.md. Let me paste it. For creating a skill.md file, you can use the Claude itself. You have to give clearly what is your need. I used Claude to create this skill.md file. So it has metadata and instructions or the body. First, metadata. As we know, name and description is mandatory. You can provide allowed tools, or if you have already provided it in the settings.json, it is not needed. Name will be same as the skill name, UI designer. Description. First, only the metadata will be loaded into the Claude context. Based on the description only, Claude will decide whether to use this skill or not. So we have to give a clear description, what this skill is going to do and when to use this skill. For our skill, I provided the description as UI UX design expert for Flask web applications and when to use. This is very important. When user requests UI design layout changes or styling improvements or creating interactive components or mentioning CSS or styling. These are like keywords. Based on your prompt practice, what keywords you will usually give. Based on that, you can create this skill.md file description. Next is body, UI designer skill. What is the role of this skill? You are a UI UX designer specializing in clean, accessible web interfaces and follow the below workflow steps strictly for designing UI. So it has to follow this workflow. I have created a 3-step workflow. Step 1, visual verification. Before making changes, you must see the current UI. So it has to first check the current UI. For checking the current UI, it has to run the application. For running the application, I have created a Python script. So this is going to be one of our resource file. So this has to be available in the root directory. Let me create a folder scripts under UI designer. Under this folder, we have to create this Python file. Let me create a file. Run and verify.py, enter. Now the file is created. We have to fill in the content. I already have the content for the Python also. It is simple. We are going to run our Flask application. So first we are going to check if the application is running. If it is running, we will say Flask server is already running. Else we will start the Flask application. We will simply execute the source app.py, which is for starting our application. Once the application is started, we have to take a screenshot with Playwright MCP tool. Let me save this Python file. So for this we are using the Playwright MCP tool. Make sure the Playwright MCP tool is added in your local machine. If not, look in our MCP section how to add the Playwright MCP tool. So the Playwright is going to navigate to the application home screen, take a screenshot and save it as before design.png. Here I have created a simple skill for demo purpose. So I am just simply going to the home screen and taking a screenshot. In real time, you have to properly navigate to the screen which you are designing and take a screenshot. Then code analysis. Read the different code that are used for CSS and design purpose like layout.html, CSS and all, and understand the code. Third step is consult the design system. Strictly follow the design tokens, colors, spacing, typography. So we have a local file references designsystem.md. This is kind of our organizational design principles, where we will be maintaining all the CSS and other design practices that we follow in our organization. So we are asking the cloud to strictly follow these design principles. Now we have to create this resource as well. Let me copy it. Under the skills, create a folder, references. Under the references, we are going to provide a file designsystem.md. For this also I have already created a demo CSS files. So basically I have created all these with Cloud Code only. In real time, you will be adding your organizational design principles. As we have already seen, there is no limit to how many resource files you have to add with the skill, because any resource file will be loaded in the context only when it is needed. So you can have hundreds of resource files, and based on your need only it will be loaded. For example, in your organization, you might be having different design or architectural document for different web elements. For example, for a button or an input field or some other CSS file for a particular web element. So you might have lot of files for this. You can load all these files, and in the instruction you can clearly mention based on the need whenever, for example, it's going to create a button. Then verify these resource files. If the new page Claude is designing is not going to use any buttons, then it won't use that resource file. So the context is not polluted. This is one important feature of the skill. So there is no limit in how many resource files you are going to add. Only you have to control it with your instructions. The instruction has to be clear on which resource file has to be used when. So after consulting the design, the success criteria is changes must be mobile responsive, new CSS must reuse existing variables wherever it is possible, verify the final result by taking a screenshot after the development. Let me add after implementation. Now we have created the skill. Let's go to terminal and let's start the Claude. First, I will check what are the MCP tools that are available. We need the Playwright. Playwright is available and connected. Next, I will check what are the skills available. Yeah, first is UI designer, UI UX expert for Flash applications. You can see here it's showing explain file. So basically this is a custom command. Claude will treat custom commands as well as the skill only. As I was mentioning in the differences section, these two are little bit overlapping concept. For Claude, it will treat the custom commands as well as a skill. So that's why it is listing all the custom commands as well as a skill. Now let me start the application. Let's check how our application currently looking. Okay, our application is started. Let me go to the link. Even though the home screen is not having any bug, the look can be still improved. Let's ask Claude to design a nice home screen. Let me go back to the Visual Studio Code. Let me stop the application, because as per the skill, it should start the application by itself. Okay, let's ask Claude to design a nice UI for our home screen. In some cases, if you want Claude to particularly use a skill, you can also mention it. For example, you can provide as / and you can provide the name of the skill. For example, it's automatically showing UI designer, but let's not give it. Let's see whether the Claude is able to understand the skill and use it when it is going to design the UI. Let me press enter. Okay, now use skill UI designer. So only we have entered the prompt, design a good UI for our home screen and implement it. Claude understood there is a skill is available and it is asking, shall I use this UI designer? Let's provide yes. As I mentioned, basically the keyword is very important. Based on these description keywords only, Claude will understand what this skill is doing and whether to use it or not in a particular scenario. So we can see here, Claude is referencing the designsystem.md file. Check the models and run the Flask app to see the current state. So it's trying to run it and navigate to URL. Playwright is doing it. So the server is running. Let me take a screenshot of the current home page. So it is able to see the design. That's why it is saying current state is very basic list layout with minimal visual appeal. Based on the understanding, it has provided a design plan. Heroes section, course cards, color system, typography, mobile responsive. So we have mentioned it here. It should be mobile responsive. So it has took all these points and based on the need, it has provided a design plan. Okay, it's already updating the files as well. Let me go down. Okay, now it says let me update the to-do list and verify the design in the browser. Once it is completed the design, it is verifying the design through the browser with Playwright. Perfect, the design is looking great. Let me scroll down to see the rest of the course cards. So it's also scrolling down and checking the design. Okay, it's asking my permission for scrolling down the window. So if you see here, it has created a to-do list. Design modern homepage, update the files, create enhanced CSS, and finally verifying design in the browser. Let me press enter. Now Playwright resize browser window. It's resizing and checking whether the browser is working fine. Let me press enter. I believe it's doing a very good testing. It's taking a lot of screenshots with the Playwright. It has mentioned the design is working beautifully across all screen sizes. As we mentioned, mobile responsive. It made different sizes of screen and tested our implementation as well. So it has completed the implementation and provided what are the key features it has done. And the screenshots are saved. Let me first open the screenshot. It's saved under Playwright MCP test output. If you see here, this is the before design. Our application before the implementation. This is after implementation. And it has made scroll. It has scrolled down to the cards and take a screenshot as well. Mobile cards view. It has made a mobile card view as well. Mobile view. Let me close this. Let me open the application now and let's check by ourselves. So it has made lot of changes based on the CSS file we have provided. If you see, it's very responsive. When I scroll on that, it's moving the cards as well. And it has removed the unwanted elements that were available here. I have just created this design system.md file using Claude. But if you have a very good organizational architecture and CSS plan, then Claude will follow that and your application will still look better. Now the skill has provided Claude with a specialized knowledge about designing the UI, where it uses the principles and resources that we have shared. Also, it has executed the Python script that we have created. So this is a very simple demo. The skills is expandable and composable. As I mentioned, you can add lot of resource files and you can use different scripts that are already available and make it more powerful. This code will be available in the GitHub. Clone it and try to run it with different prompts and see how the skills is working when you are using different prompts. Hope now the concept of agent skill is clear for you. If you have any doubts, feel free to post it on the questions. Thanks for taking the time to go through the full video. If you want to go beyond this and actually build a production level development project completely with AI, check out my full course on Udemy. Definitely, it will be a best investment that you will make this year. Thank you. Happy learning.